what are the challenges of this of the manufacturing with glassy carbon? So you I told you you can use these you can use any structure that is made of resin, and then you can carbonize it in 1 or 2 or more steps. You can fill the pores if needed, or you can reinforce the structure somehow if needed. Okay, but what will happen, one of the biggest challenges of working with glass-like carbon, so unlike graphite when you were making, you were using something like needle coke, which was already a material which has a very high carbon content and relatively lower organic materials mixed into it. But in the case of glass-like carbon, you are predominantly using a any polymer. You're using a resin. What does that mean? That means that you are going to have a lot of byproduct. What do you have during pyrolysis? You have some tar-like materials, so heavy hydrocarbons, and you have some very light hydrocarbons, and you also have some gases like methane and carbon monoxide and so on, carbon dioxide as well. So the mixture of all these gases, that is known as synthetic gas, and you have also the tar-like materials. So all of these things, where will they go? That is, so the fraction of these byproducts is much higher in the case of glassy carbon production compared to graphite production, because of the fact that graphite is already prepared by high carbon containing pitch and coke like precursors. Okay, so now what is the challenge here? If you have these byproducts, if you have your bubbles of some sort coming out of your materials, these bubbles will cause porosity. So if your structure is too thick, then what you're going to have is what you see from here. So this arrow in this image, it shows that is that is the environment that is heated. So you have the heat from the top, you have the heat from the bottom. So you see the gray regions, they convert into carbon, but the middle part still remains less carbonized, and it also contains a lot of bubbles. So what do you need to do? You need to have the optimum thickness of your structures. That is in fact one of the biggest challenges when you make glassy carbon structures at an industrial scale. You cannot have very thick structures, because once you have very thick structures, you may still have impurities trapped inside. And the smaller the size of your structure, then also that there you can play with the heat treatment temperatures a little bit, because the idea is to get rid of all the non-carbon atoms, all the impurities. Okay, so if you have something like this, if you want to decide what is the optimum size of your structure, what is the experiment that you can perform? What you can do, and this is in fact done at industrial scale, that you can make this kind of a wedge. So this is just the cross section of the wedge. So you have certain depth in it. So you can make these wedge-like. So this is like a piece of cake or something like that. So this kind of structure you can make, and then you can do the heat treatment at whatever parameters you want to use. So if you want to use 2000 degrees, or you want to use 3000, so you can, whatever is your condition. And yeah, by the way, all of this has to happen in inert environment. So I'm assuming that now we are whenever there is any oxygen or non-inert environment, then I will specifically mention. But otherwise, in general, we are always using the inert environment, which can be in most cases nitrogen, or high vacuum, or argon, or helium, or whatever you want to use. Most cases nitrogen. Okay, so you make this kind of wedge, and then you will see that the bubbles will be there in the center up to a certain dimension, and then at some point you will get clean carbon. So now you know this is the optimum thickness. You cannot go thicker than that. Is not possible with the given conditions that you're using. So this is one of the things that is frequently done. Okay. In general, in the industrial scale, anything thicker than 5 millimeter is difficult with glassy carbon. So most of the things we see, that even the molds and so on, whatever glassy carbon things we see, or even reaction vessel liners and so on, they will have just a wall. So they will be hollow structures. Or even if you make a bone implant or a tooth implant, that will most likely be a hollow structure. Nowadays, what you can also do is you can do 3D printing of the resins. So then you can make any random shape. So rather than packing and molding the resin powder or you know, making the structure using any other techniques, you can also use 3D printing. And then you can have very complex structures as long as the wall thickness is less than 5 millimeter. Then you're good, and then you can get high quality carbon. Above that is also not impossible, but then you may have to do the heat treatment multiple times in order to get rid of the impurities from its core. Okay. So industrially, about 2500 is always used. Now there are also some other parameters. For example, it's not just the rate of heating, but it's also the rate of cooling that makes a difference to the properties. So minor differences, you can, you know, there are many factors that can make minor differences to the structure of your glassy carbon or the microstructure. So you can also perform this heat treatment under pressure. What will happen when there is pressure? Then you are inducing again, whenever you have high pressure, you need to use lower temperature. That is generally the case. You can also see it from the phase diagram that you always have this relationship between pressure and temperature. So if you can use the higher pressure, then you can get the same properties at a slightly lower temperature. But slightly lower, not, you cannot go too low. So this is one more parameter. Environmental influence, of course, the gaseous environment or vacuum environment, that will make a difference. All of these factors, and of course the property of the chemical structure of the resin itself, all of these factors are going to make a difference, at least a minor difference, to the properties of your final material. And these kind of things, this is a correlation between microstructure of the material, properties of the material, and manufacturing parameters. So this is a triangle: manufacturing parameters, microstructure, and properties. These are all correlated. So these are some of the parameters that you can use, especially in the case of carbon. This is the manufacturing parameters become very important, especially in the case of glass-like carbon. You don't even have natural glassy carbon. You are just this is something which is also a very good example of, you know, advanced technology, that it is a material which is only synthetic. Like many other materials nowadays, you have polymers and this and that, but this was one of the first materials which was like completely synthetic. Okay, now yeah, if you have smaller resin particles, so these are some of all the things that you can use. And depending upon the kind of structure you want to make, if you want to make a thin film, then you don't need to worry about all of these things anyway. If you have smaller resin particles, you will have higher surface area, so you basically allow a little bit of space for the byproducts to go out. So this is also something that you can use for you know, to ensure that you don't have bubbles in the core. So these are the basically some of the parameters. These are some of the things that you will do. Okay, now the common precursors, as I mentioned already, phenol formaldehyde resins and furan resins. These are more common precursors, although there are many other polymers that can give you glassy carbon. Okay, now what is the phenol formaldehyde resin? As the name indicates, phenol plus formaldehyde. Now, depending upon the ratio of phenol and formaldehyde, you divide these polymers into two classes. One is known as Rizol and the other one is known as Novalac. So Rizols are the phenol formaldehyde resins where you have phenol to formaldehyde ratio greater than 1, and in the case of Novalac, less than 1. Now, typically what happens is Rizols are solid at room temperature and pressure. But Novalac materials are liquid. And even within the Novalacs, then by changing the ratio of phenol to formaldehyde, you can get different viscosity of the liquid. And that is why actually you can buy these phenol formaldehyde resins in a range of viscosities, because all you need to do is you need to change the ratio of phenol and formaldehyde, which is very useful for manufacturing applications. So now if you think about it, if you want to, for example, use some extrusion technique for giving a shape to your, you know, whatever you want to make. So for extrusion, you need a certain optimum viscosity. You cannot always, so you don't really need to melt your polymer or you need to go at very high temperatures. All you can do is you can just buy a version of it, which is slightly, which is more viscous or which is liquid. So for any other polymer, what you would have to do is you would have to melt it for extrusion. But in the case of phenol formaldehyde resins, you just buy the one that is liquid, and it will be fine because ultimately you need to carbonize it anyway. So you're not really going to use the properties of the polymer itself, but you're going to carbonize it anyway. So as long as it does not very does not very badly affect your carbon yield, then you're fine. You can use different viscosities of the same polymer, and that is why this is these phenol formaldehyde resins, first of all, because of the fact that they have a good carbon content and they undergo coking without becoming too liquid. So the shape is retained. This is one of the reasons they became common glassy carbon precursor, because they go through the rubbery phase, but not such a liquid phase that you completely lose the shape. So this is one thing, but the other thing is also that the availability in various viscosities is very important, and that is why it gives you the ease of manufacturing. You can use a variety of techniques. So for example, now I said you can also use 3D printing. You also have phenol formaldehyde resins which have some photo initiators mixed in it. In that case, you can do UV cross-linking. So you expose your entire structure to the UV light, and then you do some baking, and then there will be certain cross-linking. So you make the structure in a liquid material or semi-solid material, but then it becomes hard and it becomes solid. So because of this ease of manufacturing also, these have become very common precursors. Other precursor is furan resin. What is the furan resin? So this 5-membered ring is known as the furan ring. And these the very common furan resin is known as furfuryl alcohol, and when you polymerize it, then you call it polyfurfuryl alcohol, and this is also one common precursor. The advantage of furan resins is that they are relatively cheaper. So that is why, and they also give you very good quality glassy carbon. So these are also very common precursors. Okay. Now, one more interesting thing about furan resins is also that they can be prepared by some of these, biodegradable waste materials. So they can be synthesized using the waste materials, and that is why they are relatively inexpensive. Phenol formaldehyde resins will give you very good quality carbon and good manufacturability, but at the same time, they are relatively much more expensive. Okay. So the problems and challenges with glassy carbon manufacturing, we already discussed this. We already discussed some of the challenges. So the first one, of course, is the fact that you get these bubbles. So that is the issue with the manufacturability or the purity of the material. But other issues are very high cost of the raw material. So phenol formaldehyde resin, as I mentioned, it is, so compared to many other industrial materials, it's very high cost, very expensive material. Also, it depends on how large are the shapes that you're trying to make. If you want to make really large glass-like carbon structures, then they can become very expensive. But of course, for specialized applications, you are making them. For example, if you want to make this reaction vessel liner for a chemical plant, which has to, which is producing some other chemicals. So in those cases, you will use it, but in general, the cost of raw material is pretty high. Also compared to graphite, it's pretty high. Okay. Now, you are doing the heat treatment at 3000 degrees. That is also the case with synthetic graphite, by the way, or carbon fibers. Heat treatment temperatures are high, which means you need to have, just think about it, how much energy will your furnace consume? You need so much electricity to run your plant. You want to perform a certain process at 3000 degrees for very long, for prolonged durations. Also, the heat treatment sometimes is done in two steps. So you heat something up to 1000 degrees, then you cool it down. You refill your resin or whatever. And then you do it, you heat it again up to 3000 degrees. Plus, you cannot even heat it very fast. So the slower heat treatment a rate, which is known as the ramp rate. So if your ramp rate is slower, then you get better quality carbon. So you also would like to heat it slowly, which means that you just think about the energy consumption of the overall process. So this makes the cost, this makes your material itself very expensive. So this is One of the challenges that is why you don't see glassy carbon for every application. Otherwise, it's such an amazing material. You should have it more frequently. But yeah, I don't remember how much was the cost of this, but this little plate was also very expensive. So this is an expensive material, especially if you go for higher purity. Dimensional shrinkage. So this is something we have not discussed in detail, but I just briefly now mentioned it to you that the material will shrink. Think about it. You use really expensive raw materials, and then you put them in the furnace, and you only get like 30% of it out. So you actually have a lot of mass loss. So it is really putting your money into the furnace. So that is number one, the problem number one. Number two, also, after all this, you have the shrinkage. So shrinkage is not just the loss of mass and loss of material, but also the fact that you need to optimize the shape. Shrinkage should happen uniformly. So in principle, it's a property of the material that the shrinkage is also isotropic. So you will actually, because you're losing mass from everywhere, you will have isotropic shrinkage. But at the same time, if you have any substrate, when you're making your structure, let's say I made a pillar on a substrate, on a certain surface. In that case, the part that is attached to the surface, if it has good adhesion, that will not shrink so much compared to the top part. Then I will end up getting something like this rather than a pillar. So top part will shrink more than the bottom part. Similarly, sometimes if your it depends on the polymer. If your polymer is undergoing, some not rubbery but slightly liquid-like phase, then in that case you might lose the corners of your structure. And so shrinkage and change in shape is a big issue with glassy carbon manufacturing, and that is also the reason that you only are able to use certain polymers as precursors, despite the fact that we have so many synthetic polymers available, but not all of them will be able to retain the shape. Their coking mechanism might be different, and their properties might be different, and dimensional shrinkage might be different. So this is also another challenge. Now you can definitely simulate the shapes once you know the properties of a certain polymer, which will definitely require you to do certain experiments. But then once you know the properties of polymers, you can do certain simulations before your fabrication. Okay. Porosity we have already discussed, and well, with any carbon materials or the fabrication, the manufacturing of carbon materials, you will always have certain environmental concerns. Why? Because as I mentioned already, you will have these stars and gases being produced, small hydrocarbons and larger ones as well. Now you need to, either you can collect them separately, and you can then you can do the fractional distillation similar to what you do for petroleum products, and you can collect them separately. These kind of things are done when people perform pyrolysis of waste materials. That is a separate topic altogether, but not for glassy carbon manufacturing, because what happens is when you're doing manufacturing of a carbon materials, then you also have nitrogen flow or any gas flow throughout the process. So whatever are the byproducts, the synthetic gases, for example, that are being produced, they get diluted in that nitrogen. So now whatever you're able to, even if you're able to collect it back, the separation from the nitrogen, so because then the quantity is very low at any given point, because it's diluted. So now you have to, first of all, you need to separate those gases from your nitrogen or whatever is the carrier gas, and then you need to collect them, and then the quantity might be very, very small, because you see, you're not making very large structures. With glassy carbon, you're only, I mean, even if they are large, like in terms of dimensions, even then they are very thin. Their wall thickness is only a few millimeters. So altogether, the overall material is not so much that you can get a significant amount of tars, or not enough that you can collect them and then you can reutilize them. In fact, that becomes very expensive. So in that case, you need to have certain filters which can protect these materials to go into the environment directly. And that is why you need to take care of environmental factors also. So these are some of the problems and challenges which are currently there with glassy carbon manufacturing. Okay, now some solutions are there, or some solutions are being, also people are working on them. So in terms of the manufacturability and the cost of the raw materials and so on, well, number one, optimize the properties as per the application. So you know that if you go to higher pyrolysis temperatures, higher heat treatment temperatures, then you will get much higher electrical conductivity. But do you really need that? If it is an electrode application and electrical properties are very important to you, electrochemical properties, in that case, definitely you need to go to that kind of temperature. But if it is, any other application where you can live with slightly lower electrical conductivity, maybe the mechanical properties are more important. In that case, so you need to optimize, you need to figure out what is the optimum, pyrolysis or heat treatment temperature for the kind of material that you want, which is determined by the application that you have. Okay. Now, of course, now still the phenol formaldehyde resins are very common, but you can also develop, so even furan resins, for example, people are making from the waste materials, and there are many other new polymers that are coming up. And this is another, so if we that is kind of a polymer synthesis work. If we can get more suitable polymers for fabrication of glass like carbon, that will, and they are also inexpensive, then that will definitely help us with the cost. Okay, one more thing that can be tried out is that you mix catalysts in the precursor. Now this also happens in the case of graphitization. I talked about this, catalytic graphitization. So what happens when you mix these catalyst particles? Typically they are metal particles. Nowadays people use metal nanoparticles because the more surface area your catalyst will have, the better it will perform, because it just lowers your activation energy. Okay, now what happens is when you're forming, so you see these three lines I have just, it's indicated on top of these metal particles. What happens is when your carbon, when your matrix is carbonizing, this polymer is carbonizing, then if you have these metal particles, just close to them, you will see more graphitic regions. There are various mechanisms that are proposed for this. For example, you have this metal carbide formation, and then the carbon or graphitic carbon is precipitated out of it. This is one proposed mechanism. So what happens, however, you do see that around your metal particles, or sometimes people even use other carbon nanomaterials as catalyst, for example. So around those things you see more graphitic regions, which means you see a higher crystallinity in this, so higher short range order. So again, altogether you have a disordered carbon material, but you still have certain short range order. So to increase that, to increase the graphitic content of your carbon material, you can use this metal nanoparticles or any other catalytic particles. This kind of effect where you have these regions closer to the catalyst particles which are more graphitized, that is known as templating effect. Okay. Now, however, when you use any catalytic particles, catalyst, then you have, of course, you end up compromising the purity of your material, because you have to then afterwards leach out all the particles that you added. If you have a certain application where it's okay to have some particles, or if you're using carbon nanomaterials as the catalytic particles, in that case, you don't need to worry about it. So also the other, so this is something that you need to see whether or not using catalyst and which kind of catalyst is acceptable for your material. But this is one of the solutions which can lower the overall energy consumption of the process. Okay. In order to take care of the dimensional shrinkage, we need to do shape optimization. Actually, that's all that works. You need to know the properties of your polymer, what shrinkage, what carbon yield do you have, and then accordingly you need to optimize your shape. Okay. Design your structures in such a way that they have more surface area, and that is why so for example, thin walled structures. So this is more like a compromise on the shape. But you can also use these, as I said, powder of the precursor, such that you have more surface area. More surface area will help you get rid of the porosity. Okay. Now we will talk separately about micro and nano carbon structures, classic carbon structures. They have a much higher surface area because they are smaller. The smaller the structures, the more surface to volume ratio you have, and that is why you also require their less polymer, less material. So in that case, you have, and you can also use lithographic techniques to pattern them, and then because of all of these factors, you can even use slightly lower temperatures for carbonization and get properties close to this industrial glassy carbon, close to. So they may not have the exact same electrical conductivity, but reasonably high that can be used for device applications. So that is something we will talk about.